Hi, Pastor Steve here in Visalia, California. This is Happy Thoughts. We're studying the Gospel of Mark. It's been a couple of weeks since I posted. I'm sorry for that. Just this is the season of Thanksgiving and all kinds of other things going on, but we're back on it. We will finish out the Gospel of Mark, I think, probably by the end of January or so. Today we're in the 10th chapter, verses 46 through 52. This is the last pericope, that just means little section of scripture prior to Jesus and the disciples entering into Jerusalem. So they are on their way to Jerusalem, and as Mark portrays that journey once they turn towards Jerusalem, each scene has lots of layers of meaning, including this one. This is one of the most beautiful, I think, and compelling scenes of a healing in the Gospel of Mark, and we'll talk about why that is as we read through it. So let me read to you the scripture first. They, that being Jesus, and actually a quite a bit larger crowd, because everybody's pouring into the holy city, into Jerusalem for Passover. They came to Jericho. As he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up. He is calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." And immediately he regained his sight, and then he followed him on the way. Mark 10:46 through 52. Let's break it down a little bit in some of the important component parts. The first thing is, again, this is the last thing that happens in Mark's gospel prior to Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And it is significant that the last thing that Mark chooses to portray is this healing of a blind man. We've talked all along to this point in the gospel of the disciples' inability or unwillingness to really understand or accept what Jesus is telling them when he explains the process of salvation, that he must die and then he'll rise again. And so the blindness in the miracles that he performed is used by Mark as a writer to undergird both the idea of the power of Jesus to heal, but also the blindness, the spiritual blindness of even those who were closest to him. And that happens again. It's an interesting dichotomy that people who have been with Jesus all along the way try to silence the man and get him to shut up. Presumably, the text doesn't tell us this, but presumably because they're on their way to Jerusalem and they'd like to just get on the road. I know that's sometimes the trap that I fall into when the family is going someplace, right? I don't want to stop for a bunch of stuff that I might not be interested in. I want to get to the destination. For whatever reason, it ends up with this strange dichotomy of the very people who have seen Jesus heal time and time again are telling someone who is calling out to Jesus for obvious healing to shut up and go away, again, because they're moving down the road. That in and of itself, I think bears just looking at a little bit. In the modern expression of the church and in each individual's life who follows Jesus, we have to beware that we don't get enamored of other things, of growth or of finishing whatever assignments or whatever it is that the church is up to, so that we allow ourselves to distance ourselves from the very one that are in a place where they're calling out for the healing or for the power that Jesus has for them. Most churches are really small groups of people who are the same culture, same color, same economic scale. So it isn't unusual to have a completely Asian church or a completely black church or a completely white church. And that should sadden everybody who's a part of Christianity, Latino churches too. When we choose to construct ourselves so that everybody is most comfortable, we choose to silence those outside of our own group who might be most ready to hear the gospel. So one of the things that becomes an issue for me as I age as a pastor, and I really wish it was more of an issue for more Christians, is it can't be that the best witness that we can give is to continue to form churches or continue to have churches that are effectively monotone, right? They're all, in the case of many United Methodist congregations, they're all white, they're all middle class, they're all college educated, and there's almost nobody else in the church like that. And the reason for that is because people outside of those norms who don't see life through the same lenses are effectively told to be quiet and to go away because the rest of us are trying to follow Jesus. Think about how crazy that is. You shut up there with your need and with your desire for God to help you because we want God to help us, or we want God to continue on the road that we think he should be on. It just repeats itself ad nauseum. One of the things that happens in the modern world with really, really severe criticism of Christianity is a lot of Christians double down on whatever they have done, insisting that everything they do is biblical and everything they do is right. And I'm in pretty strong disagreement with that. I think that a faithful person listens to the criticisms that people level, knowing that some of them are just projected anger and don't hold water, but some of them hit pretty close, and we should adjust to that. So the church has to, in the way that it ministers in its community, make sure that they don't get so emboldened following their vision or their ideas that they leave the very people who are most needful of the touch of Jesus on the periphery in the crowd, being told to shut up and that you're not welcome here. That's a really, really difficult thing to do, a really hard thing to orchestrate in the local church, but it's necessary. Fortunately, what we learn about the character of God through Jesus is he doesn't care what the majority of people say. It's not a vote that carries the day with Jesus. He cares that the man called out to him, and the man uses the title Son of David, which is a politically loaded title, to be honest, and I think that's why Mark includes the story here. He uses the title Son of David, which is the same as saying deliverer or Messiah, and that probably certainly gets Jesus' attention. For whatever reason, Jesus stops, and he has done that one other time when the woman touched him in the crowd, touched the hem of his garment in the crowd, and he stopped to find out who had taken power out of him. In this case, he stops and he says, "Call the man to me," and then he asks the man, "What do you want from me?" And the man says quite clearly and distinctly, "I want to see again." And Jesus then restores his sight without touch, without the double healing for the blind man earlier in the Gospel of Mark. He simply says, "Go, your faith has made you well." He emphasizes the man's faith in Jesus, and that makes sense in light of the fact that they're heading into Jerusalem and getting ready for the passion of Christ, right? So for his trial, his death, and his resurrection. Faith is underlined in the way this story is told because it's coming into the season where the disciples themselves will need to have faith. So it's a really fascinating section of scripture. There are a lot of other details that we go into, but they don't kind of drive the main point. I would say for all practicing Christians, and I assume most of you who watch this are practicing Christians, you should look at your church and you should look at yourself in light of this scripture and make sure that you are not callously telling people to be quiet, refusing to talk about your faith, refusing to introduce people to Jesus because it's either inconvenient or it makes you feel uncomfortable or they seem like different people. The very people who offend us the most by their political opinions or even their religious opinions or by their lifestyle and the way they choose to live are the people whose actions tell us that they're crying out for the sacred touch of Christ and to be healed so that they can see more clearly the path that he has set out. It really is necessary as a part of our ongoing transformation as followers of Jesus to learn to stop shushing people and telling them to be quiet lest they get in the way of the plans that we have made or the things that we think are important, and to take the time to hear the cry of distress and to bring those people to the feet of Jesus so that the power of Jesus can manifest. So I hope that is a good summation of this section of Mark, and we will look at the triumphal entry into Jerusalem and then the passion of Jesus in the coming weeks. I hope that you're blessed wherever you are, that Thanksgiving was a cause to give lots of thanks for the things in your life, especially the opportunities you have to witness to the power of Christ in your life. God bless, and we'll see you next week.